I knew the blue pie plate before I knew the house. It was sitting on a folding table at the end of the driveway, chipped on the left side, with a strip of masking tape that said $3. That pie plate had been in my family longer than I had. My mother baked apple pies in it every Sunday after church. I used it the last Christmas my husband was alive. And there it was, under the bright Ohio sun, between a box of old Christmas lights and Tom's tackle box, while a woman in white sneakers asked if anyone would take $2. That's how I found out my children were selling my life. That's also how I learned just how easy it had been, on paper at least, for the world to keep moving after I was declared dead. There was a sign near the mailbox that said estate sale. Under that, in smaller letters, it said the estate of Ruth Keller. My name, my full name, neat black letters on white poster board like I was a chapter someone had finished reading. I stood there with one hand on my cane and the other gripping the car door so hard my fingers hurt. Marisol, the social worker who drove me down from the rehab place, said my name very softly, like she was afraid I might break in half. "Ruth," she whispered, "you don't have to do this today." But I did. I had already lost almost 6 years. I wasn't going to lose my china cabinet, too. The strange thing is, when people picture a moment like that, they imagine yelling right away. They imagine shock, tears, maybe somebody dropping a lamp. What I remember first is the smell: coffee from somewhere inside the house, dust in the warm air, cut grass, the sweet little smell of old books when the sun hits them. My home smelled exactly like my home, even while strangers picked through it. A man in a baseball cap was turning over Tom's old hammer like he'd found buried treasure. 2 teenage girls were laughing over my Christmas sweaters. Somebody had put orange price stickers on my recipe box. I watched a woman open it, flip through my mother's handwriting, and set it back down like it was nothing, like those cards hadn't fed a family for 40 years. I almost turned around then, not because I was weak. I was tired of being looked at like I didn't belong in my own life. I'd spent months getting that look from nurses, county clerks, insurance people, and once from a pharmacist who told me my records showed I was deceased, so no, he could not refill anything until the system was fixed. Dead women, apparently, are very hard to process at the counter. But I didn't turn around. I took one step, then another, and walked into my own estate sale. 6 years earlier, I was 68 and still driving myself everywhere. I lived in the same white farmhouse outside Dayton that my husband Tom and I had bought when the kids were little. It wasn't fancy. The kitchen floor tilted a bit near the sink, and the upstairs windows rattled when the wind pushed hard from the west. But Tom built the back porch with his own hands, and every mark on every wall had a story behind it. The blue one by the hallway closet was where Ben swung a toy bat inside after I told him not to. The scratch near the pantry came from Amy trying to roller skate in her socks. I could stand in that house and see my whole life at once. Tom had been gone 3 years by then, a fast kind of cancer, the sort that lets you think you have time right up until you don't. After he died, everybody got very serious around me. Amy started saying words like practical and manageable. Ben, who lived in Arizona and came home twice a year if we were lucky, started sending me links to condo listings. My grandson Luke, who was 10 then, just asked if I still made grilled cheese the way Grandpa liked it, with the butter all the way to the corners. That question nearly took me out. I wasn't falling apart the way they seemed to think. I was lonely, yes. Grief sat in the house with me every night, but I still paid my bills. I still mowed my own little patch of yard until Amy complained. I still sang to the radio badly and watered Tom's tomato plants even though they never grew right after he died. The truth was, the house didn't make me feel stuck. It made me feel held. Amy meant well, I know that now. She lived 40 minutes away, had a husband I never much trusted, and spent half her life hurrying from one thing to another. She worried. That was her way of loving people. It just didn't always feel loving on the receiving end. The last real argument we had before I disappeared was in my kitchen, over tea gone cold. "Mom, I'm not trying to take your house," she said. "That's funny," I told her, "because it sounds a lot like you're trying to take my house. I'm trying to make sure you don't end up alone on the floor with a broken hip and nobody finds you. I have neighbors. You have neighbors who are older than you. I remember folding a dish towel over and over while she talked, not because I was angry, not at first, mostly because I hated that part of widowhood where everybody starts speaking to you like the ending has already been decided. Then she said, maybe it's time to think about what happens after. I looked at her and said, Amy, I'm still in the middle of my life. That shut her up for about 3 seconds. Then she said, Mom, you're 68. I said, and... She rubbed her forehead, and people have to make plans. That word again, plans. I had planned to grow old with Tom. I had planned for him to sit on that porch and complain about the Reds and burn burgers in summer. I had planned for a lot of things. Life had its own ideas. The next morning I left for a quilting retreat in West Virginia. 3 days, nothing wild, just a church group and a lodge up in the hills where women my age could sew, gossip, and pretend our backs didn't hurt. Amy told me to text when I got there. I told her I would. We were both still sore from the argument, but not the kind of sore you think will last. I kissed Luke on the top of his head when I picked him up from baseball the night before. I remember that too. He smelled like dirt and sunscreen. I never made it to the lodge. There had been rain all afternoon, the heavy kind that makes the highway look like it's breathing. Traffic slowed once I got into the hills. I remember the guardrail on my right, the river below, and a pickup truck coming too fast around a bend. He slid a little over the center line. I jerked the wheel. The tires lost hold. The last clear thing I remember is the sound of metal scraping and the world tipping sideways. After that, memory gets strange. I've had doctors ask me if I remember the coma. I never know how to answer that. I don't remember it like a movie. It was more like living at the bottom of a deep lake. There were sounds above me sometimes, a beeping, a door, a man coughing. Once, for a while, I kept hearing Amazing Grace, and later a nurse told me one of the aides played old hymns during the night shift because she said patients rested better. I rested so hard I vanished. What happened, they told me later, was this. My car went through the guardrail and into fast water. A fisherman found me nearly a mile downstream, tangled in brush on the muddy bank, still breathing but barely. My purse was gone. My phone was gone. The car itself washed farther off and wasn't found for more than a year. By then it was packed with silt and impossible to make much of. I had a bad head injury, a crushed shoulder, and swelling in my brain. The hospital listed me as Jane Doe. Then they transferred me again. State lines, bad records, full units, short staff, one thing after another. My family reported me missing back in Ohio. Search teams looked, flyers went up, weeks turned into months, months turned into years. And all that time, I was alive. I woke up in pieces. First there was light, too bright, then pain in my throat, then a face I did not know saying, "If you can hear me, squeeze my hand." I could not squeeze anything, not then. Later I learned I had been in a long-term care hospital outside Knoxville for almost 5 years. 5 years and 3 months to be exact. The nurse who first saw me really awake was named Devin. He wore cartoon bandages on his fingers because the tape from his gloves kept cutting his skin. That's the kind of detail that sticks, and I'm glad it does. If I'd come back to a world with no human details in it, I don't think I would have stayed. When I first looked in a mirror, I cried so hard they had to wheel me back to bed. Not because I looked ugly, because I looked old in a way I had not earned day by day. My hair was almost all gray. My face had fallen in around my mouth. One eyebrow never rose as high as the other anymore. I touched my cheek and thought, who is that? I had missed my own aging. That felt cruel in a way I still can't fully explain. My words took longer than my thoughts. Names floated near me and drifted off. I knew Tom before I knew myself. Isn't that something? The first clear word I said was Tom. The second was home. They kept asking, who is Tom? Where is home? And I couldn't tell them, not yet. It sat behind a locked door in my head. Days became therapy, swallowing, sitting up, standing, learning how to move my left foot without staring at it first. A young physical therapist named Nate made me march in place while old rock songs played low through the rehab gym. He called me tough. I hated him for that at the beginning. People only call you tough when they plan to ask more from you. Marisol came into my life around the time I could say 6 or 7 words together. She was the hospital social worker, the kind with kind eyes and shoes meant for fast walking. She asked questions nobody else had time for, not just what's your name, but what feels familiar. What do you dream about? What do you miss? I told her I missed the sound of ice dropping in Tom's glass at night. I missed the smell of cut tomatoes. I missed a hallway with family pictures on one side and a thermostat that always stuck on the other. She wrote everything down. One afternoon, she brought me a tablet and said, "I want to try something." She searched missing women, Ohio, West Virginia, age range, hair color before gray. Then she searched churches, quilting groups, local news. She was patient. She kept changing little details. I was starting to drift when she stopped breathing for a second. "What?" I whispered. She turned the screen toward me. It was me. Not a new picture, an old church directory photo, the one where I wore a blue sweater and hated my smile because one side looked tighter than the other. Under it were the words "missing local woman PRESUMED dead after 5 years. There was another link too, my obituary. I stared at my own face for so long the screen went dark. Marisol said very gently, "Ruth, I think we found you." I did not feel found, I felt dropped. My obituary was short: beloved wife of the late Thomas Keller, loving mother of Amy Donnelly and Benjamin Keller, cherished grandmother of Luke Donnelly, active member of her church, enjoyed quilting, baking, and gardening. The family wishes to thank the community for support during this difficult time. There was a line that said a memorial service was held privately after years of hope and sorrow. Years of hope and sorrow, that part got me more than anything. Because while I was lying in a bed under another name, my children had spent years not knowing if I was cold, scared, hurt, dead, or simply gone by choice. I don't care how old your kids are. Knowing that kind of pain sat on them while I said nothing, did nothing, could do nothing. It cut deep. Then came the part that almost made me laugh if I hadn't been so shocked. There was a government notice in the county records. Ruth Elaine Keller had been declared legally deceased by court order the year before. My house, my accounts, my name, all handled, neat, final. "Can they do that?" I asked. Marisol gave me a look that said she dealt in ugly paperwork every day. After enough time passes and someone is still missing, yes. But I'm here. I know. That first week after they found my name, I was angry at everyone. The state, the hospital, the river, God, my children, myself. Most of all, I think I was angry at time. Time had gone right on using me up while I wasn't looking. Marisol started making calls. My records had to be matched, my fingerprints taken again, dental work checked, because once the law decides you are dead, it likes proof before it changes its mind. There were people who seemed almost annoyed that I had survived, not out loud, of course, but you can hear annoyance in a long pause. You can hear it in the words, "complicated case." I wanted to call Amy right away. Marisol said maybe we should wait until we had stronger proof in hand. I said if my daughter heard my voice, that would be proof enough. I was wrong. We found a phone number for her through old records and one of those people search sites nobody likes to admit they use. Marisol held the phone near my ear because my hand still shook. It rang 3 times. "Amy," I said when she answered. Silence. "Amy, it's Mom." The silence changed shape. It turned sharp. Then she said, "Who is this?" "It's me." No, her voice broke on that one word. "No, don't do this." "Amy, honey." She hung up. I stared at the wall while Marisol slowly lowered the phone. After maybe 10 seconds, I said, "Call again." She did, straight to voicemail. I tried Ben next, same thing, only worse. He cursed, said if this was a joke he'd call the police, and disconnected before I got through half a sentence. I don't blame either of them. If somebody had called me claiming to be my dead mother, I would have thought the world had finally gone mean in a new way. That night I did not sleep. I lay there listening to the hum of the hall lights and wondered what my children had lived through. Had Amy gone to the river? Had Ben flown home? Did Luke cry? Did they fight over whether to keep looking? Did Amy blame herself for our argument? That thought bothered me so much I asked Marisol the next morning if we could print the news stories. There were more than I expected. There was Amy on local TV 6 weeks after I disappeared, standing beside a folding table covered in flyers. Her face looked puffy from crying. She kept saying, "If anyone has seen my mother, even if you think it doesn't matter, please call." Ben was in another picture near the water with search volunteers. Luke was too young to be quoted, but there he was in one photo holding Amy's hand outside the church. Little baseball cap, missing front tooth. I cried over that child more than I cried over myself. For a while those articles gave me comfort. They had looked, they had tried, they had not let me go easily. Then I found one from the 5th year after the court hearing. Amy looked smaller somehow, tired in the bones. The article said the family sought a legal death declaration so they could settle property issues and move forward after prolonged uncertainty. Move forward, that phrase hurt. I know now she didn't mean move on from me. She meant move at all. By then my house had been sitting empty for years. Pipes burst twice, taxes stacked up, insurance got ugly. Ben wanted to sell, Amy wanted to wait, a judge wanted paperwork. Grief, I have learned, becomes very administrative after a while. The county moved faster than my body did. My identity was coming back on paper, but not in any way that helped me feel whole. I had no bank account. My driver's license was dead with me. My social security record was frozen. My old health insurance was gone. Every time somebody said, "Until this gets corrected," I wanted to scream. Corrected back to what? To who I had been at 68. That woman was gone. The mirror proved it. The first real piece of hope came from Nate, of all people. One morning, after I'd managed a shaky walk from one end of the therapy bars to the other, he said, "You know what I think." "I think you talk too much," I told him. He grinned. "I think you're trying to go somewhere." I was. Marisol found the estate sale listing by accident. She had been checking public records for the house. There it was online, bright as day, with photos, living room furniture, kitchenware, antiques, quilting supplies, tools, holiday decor, estate of Ruth Keller, Saturday and Sunday, 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. She closed the screen too fast, which is how I knew it was bad. "A show me. A Ruth. A show me. So she did." There was my dining room table, the one Tom sanded and refinished after Amy spilled nail polish on it in 9th grade. My green armchair, the hallway mirror from my grandmother's house, the ceramic angel Luke made me in 2nd grade, the one with one wing bigger than the other. They had laid my life out online with little cheerful captions. Vintage linens, kitchen collectibles, farmhouse accent pieces. Accent pieces. I put my hand over my mouth and laughed once, just once, a hard, ugly sound. Marisol said, "We can call them, we can try to stop it." "Can we?" She hesitated. That was answer enough. The law was still grinding along. I was still, technically, both present and not fully restored. The sale company had a contract, the house was in the estate, the county had approved. To stop it fast would take people moving at a speed nobody in those offices had shown yet. "What day is it?" I asked. "A Tuesday." "When's the sale?" "A Saturday." I looked at my legs, at the cane leaning against my chair, at the ugly rubber sole of the rehab shoe on my left foot. "I need to be standing by Saturday," I said. Nate heard about my plan and said it was too much. I told him I had once given birth to an 8-pound baby after 21 hours of labor, and if he thought a few extra therapy sessions were too much, then he had lived a very gentle life. That shut him up in a way I appreciated. For 3 days, I worked like a woman trying to climb out of a grave. Maybe that's exactly what I was doing. I stood until my back shook. I walked until sweat rolled down behind my knees. I practiced getting in and out of a car. I practiced stairs. I practiced saying my full name clearly enough that no one could pretend not to hear it. At night, I thought about what I would say if I saw Amy. I came up with 100 speeches and hated all of them. I wanted to accuse her. I wanted to hold her. I wanted to ask why my pie plate would ever be marked $3. Mostly I wanted to see her face when she knew I was not gone. On Friday afternoon, Marisol got a call from a county office confirming what we already knew from dental records and scar matches. It was official enough for them, not official enough for the world yet. More forms to come, more waiting, but she looked at me and said, "I can take you tomorrow." So she did. The drive from Tennessee to Ohio was long, and I spent most of it watching the road like it might remember me. The farther north we went, the more little things came back. The gas station where Tom always bought sunflower seeds, the billboard for a furniture outlet that had been there forever, the church sign outside Middletown that changed every week and still somehow sounded judgmental. When we turned onto my road, my hands started to shake, not from fear, from recognition. Trees I knew, fences I knew, the curve where Ben once drove into a ditch trying to impress a girl. Then my house came into view and there were cars lined along the shoulder and bright balloons tied to the mailbox and strangers walking in and out carrying my things. I told Marisol to stop before we reached the driveway. "I need a minute." She nodded. I sat there looking at the porch Tom built, the porch I had not seen in almost 6 years, and realized two things at once. First, I still loved that house enough to feel it in my ribs. Second, it no longer belonged only to memory. It had become evidence, proof that I had lived, proof I was not a ghost, no matter what the paperwork said. Then I saw the pie plate, and then I got out of the car. A woman with a bright pink clipboard smiled at me as I came up the drive. "Morning," she said, "half off in the garage after noon." I looked at her name tag, Sheila. I said, "That's my pie plate." She blinked, "I'm sorry." "The blue one, that belongs to me." She gave Marisol a quick look, the kind people give when they're deciding whether they're dealing with grief or trouble. "Ma'am, this is a contracted estate sale." I know exactly what it is. I took one more step and pointed at the sign by the mailbox. "I'm Ruth Keller." If she had laughed, I think I might have hit her with my cane, but she didn't. Her face just went still. She looked at the sign, looked back at me, then past me toward the front door. Inside the living room, somebody said, "Amy, you need to come out here." I heard her before I saw her, that quick little answer she always gave when she was busy. "What?" Then she came through the doorway carrying a stack of old tablecloths. There are moments when the body knows something before the mind can catch up. She dropped the tablecloths, not dramatically. Her fingers simply let go. They slid to the porch floor in a soft heap. She looked at me like all the blood had gone out of the world. I said, "Hi, honey." For one full breath, nobody moved. Then Amy made a sound I had never heard from her in my life. It was not a scream. It was not a sob. It was the sound of someone hit by truth too hard and too fast. She came down the porch steps so quickly I thought she might fall. I put out my hand and then she was in my arms, shaking so hard my own balance nearly gave way. "Oh my God," she kept saying. "Oh my God, oh my God." I held her as best I could with one good shoulder and a cane trapped between us. Her hair smelled like the same shampoo she used in high school. Some things really do survive. People were starring, Sheila was starring, a man holding Tom's hammer was starring. Marisol, bless her, started telling everyone the sale was paused. A few customers drifted awkwardly toward their cars, others pretended to look at things while openly listening. Estate sales bring out a certain kind of curiosity. Amy pulled back and touched my face with both hands like she was checking whether I was solid. Mom. I'm here. No, she was crying and laughing at once. You're here. Then a voice behind her said, what the hell is going on? Ben. He was older, heavier through the middle, more gray than I expected. He had Tom's forehead. For 1 second he looked angry, then he really looked at me and the anger dropped out of him like a coat hitting the floor. Mom. Hi, Ben. He didn't rush me the way Amy did. That wasn't him. He came close, slow, like a man approaching an injured animal he loved and feared spooking. Then he touched my arm with 2 fingers and I watched his face break open. He turned away right after that, hand over his mouth. Ben had been hiding tears since about age 12. He wasn't much better at it in his 40s. The strangest part came next. A tall boy stood in the front doorway, one shoulder higher than the other, brown hair falling in his eyes, and I knew him before I let myself believe it. Luke, I said. He had been 10 when I left. He was almost 16 now. He looked at Amy, then at me. Mom. Amy nodded through tears. He came down the steps slowly, like he'd learned caution from years I had not seen. When he stopped in front of me, he was taller than I was, taller than Tom had been nearly. I reached up and touched his cheek. He started crying instantly, and that's when I did too. I thought, he said, and then couldn't finish. I know, I told him, I know. We went inside after that because there are only so many life-changing moments a person should have in front of a folding table full of used kitchen towels. Marisol stood guard at the door with Sheila, who had gone pale and very professional. Customers were sent away. Some were kind about it. One man actually asked if the discounts would still apply Sunday, and Amy stared at him until he backed out without another word. The house looked wrong, not empty exactly but loosened, drawers pulled open, closet doors wide, price tags everywhere. I stood in my own kitchen and saw little blank squares on the walls where pictures had hung for years. It felt like walking into a mouth with teeth missing. Amy made coffee because she didn't know what else to do with her hands. Ben paced. Luke stayed so close to me I could feel the heat of him. Marisol sat quietly at the table like a witness who understood she was part of the story now, whether she meant to be or not. Finally, Amy turned around from the counter and said, "Where have you been?" It came out sharper than she meant it to, but pain does that. So I told them. Not every medical detail, just the shape of it, the road, the river, the years in a bed under another name, waking up old, finding my obituary, calling and not being believed. When I said that last part, Amy covered her face. Oh God, that was you. Oh yes. I thought somebody was being cruel. I know. I listened to that voicemail for an hour after. I kept thinking. She stopped and pressed a fist to her mouth. Ben sat down hard in Tom's old chair. We looked for you, he said. For years, Mom. I saw. No, I mean really looked. His voice was rough. I flew back and forth so many times I can still tell you which airport sandwich is least terrible. We hired people, volunteers searched. Amy drove down there twice a month at first. Luke drew your face on flyers. He swallowed. We never stopped right away. We didn't. I know, I said again, and I did. Amy set a mug in front of me with shaking hands. It was my yellow one with the tiny crack near the handle. Seeing it nearly undid me. I should have known your voice, she whispered. How could you? I said. You buried me. That word sat between us. Ben looked up. We didn't bury. There was. He rubbed his eyes. We had a memorial, no body. I nodded. I know. Amy sat down across from me. She looked thinner than before, older too, not just older from years, older from carrying something heavy too long. The court thing, she said, I need you to understand. We didn't do that because we wanted to let you go. Then why? Her laugh came out tired and mean at herself, because everything got impossible. That was when I heard the last 6 years from their side. The first year they lived on hope, search teams, tip lines, phone calls at 2 in the morning because somebody in West Virginia thought they'd seen me at a diner. The second year, hope got mixed with guilt. Amy blamed herself for our argument. Ben blamed himself for living so far away. Luke stopped asking when I was coming home and started asking if people could get lost forever. By the third year, the house itself became a problem. Pipes burst in a hard freeze. A storm tore shingles off the roof. Insurance fought them because I was missing, not confirmed dead. Bank accounts froze. Taxes didn't care where I was. Ben wanted to sell before the place rotted away. Amy refused. Every time I unlocked the front door, she said, I felt like if I waited 5 more minutes, maybe you'd walk in. I looked around the kitchen, but eventually you stopped waiting. Her eyes filled. No, eventually I got tired. That landed hard because it was honest. The court order came after 5 years. The judge called it closure. Ben signed because the lawyer said there was no other way to untangle the property and keep the county from taking the house. Amy signed 3 weeks later, after leaving the papers on her table untouched until coffee rings marked the top page. I hated myself, she said. I believed that too. As for the sale, she looked around the room and gave a little helpless gesture. I kept putting it off. Ben wanted his half out. The roof needs replacing. Brian and I. She stopped. Brian and you what? She looked down. We split up in March. That caught me off guard. I had missed a whole divorce. Luke stared at the table. Amy went on quietly. I'm renting a townhouse. I can't keep this place up. I tried to save the personal things. I did. The pie plate was supposed to be in the keep box. Sheila, who had been hovering in the doorway looking like she wished she sold office furniture for a living, spoke up for the first time. That one was my assistant's mistake, she said. I'm very sorry. For reasons I still don't entirely understand, that apology nearly made me laugh. Maybe because after death declarations and coma years and lost children and broken houses, the pie plate had come down to an assistant's mistake. Life is almost rude in the way it mixes the huge and the tiny. Ben leaned forward and put both elbows on the table. Mom, there's something else. I braced myself. I pushed the sale, he said it straight. Amy didn't want to, I did. Amy looked at him, then away. Why? I asked. He looked around the house before answering. Because every time I came here, it felt like a museum of the worst thing that ever happened to us. Because I hated seeing your chair empty. Because I hated that Luke wouldn't sleep over here anymore but still asked if we should leave the porch light on. Because I couldn't fix any of it, and selling the place felt like the first thing that had an end point. That was Ben all over. When pain got too large, he reached for a task. I'm not proud of it, he said, but I need you to know it wasn't greed. I believed him. That was the hard part. It would have been easier if one of them had turned cold. Villains are easier than exhausted people. Luke had been quiet so long I almost forgot he was in the room. Then he said, I kept something. We all looked at him. He stood and left the kitchen without another word. A minute later he came back holding a folded quilt. My quilt, blue squares, little white stars, one corner stitched wrong because Tom kept talking while I was sewing it. Luke carried it carefully like it was alive. I took it before the sale people came, he said. It was on my bed at Dad's house for a while too. I thought maybe, if you ever came back. He didn't finish, he didn't need to. I reached for the quilt and pressed it to my chest. It smelled faintly like laundry soap and teenage room. I closed my eyes. There are objects that keep time better than clocks do. That quilt held the years I had lost and the years Luke had spent waiting without wanting to admit it. Thank you, I said. He shrugged, embarrassed by gratitude, exactly like Ben. You always said quilts are for use, not show. I did. I remembered. There is no pain like seeing memory survive in someone else when your own life has been torn at the edges. We talked for hours after that, stopped, cried, started again. The truth came in pieces because that's how families carry it. Amy told me she had gone back to the river every year on the date I disappeared. Ben admitted he stopped saying my name out loud for a while because it hurt less that way. Luke told me he almost didn't come to the sale because he hated strangers touching my things. Then he looked down and said, "I'm glad I came." So was I. Around noon, Marisol quietly reminded us that there were legal steps coming, phone calls, official statements, people who would need to hear this from someone besides family. I could feel tiredness pressing into my bones. Coming back from the dead, it turns out, is exhausting. Amy asked, "What do you want to do about the sale?" All morning I had thought the answer would be everything stops. No one touches another spoon, no one carries out another lamp. Mine, mine, mine. But sitting there in that scraped-open kitchen, with my daughter hollowed by years of guilt, my son worn down by helplessness, and my grandson clutching the edge of the quilt like a little boy pretending not to need comfort, something in me shifted. The house had not been the only thing frozen in time, so had they. I looked around at all the objects I had once thought were the same thing as memory. They helped, yes, they carried stories, but they were not the stories themselves. I had been gone nearly 6 years, and somehow the real pieces of me had lasted in people. Some of it can go, I said. Amy frowned through tears. Mom, I mean it. Ben leaned back, surprised. I touched the recipe box. Some things stay, family pictures, letters, Tom's chair, the quilt, a few kitchen things, but the rest, I let out a breath, the rest is stuff. That didn't mean it was easy. It just meant I suddenly knew I did not need every plate and lamp to prove I existed. Amy started crying all over again. Are you sure? No, I said honestly, but I think it's still true. Sheila re-entered the kitchen like a woman stepping onto thin ice. I can postpone the rest of today, she offered, and tomorrow if that's best. I looked at Amy, at Ben, at the doorway where Luke stood half-grown and watchful. No, I said, just give us time to pull what matters. So we did. The next 2 hours were the strangest treasure hunt of my life. We walked room to room slowly with boxes marked keep. I chose my mother's pie plate, of course, Tom's flannel shirts, not all of them, just the red one and the green one because I could still picture him in both, the recipe box, the hallway mirror, my wedding album, a tin of Christmas ornaments, Luke's clay angel with the crooked wing. Ben took Tom's toolbox and one coffee mug with a chipped handle because apparently that was the one Tom always used on Saturdays. Amy kept my sewing basket and the yellow mixing bowl she said reminded her of birthday cakes. Every choice felt like a small answer to a bigger question. What do you save after loss? What do you let the world carry away? At one point I stood in my bedroom, looking at the indentation in the wallpaper where our headboard used to rest, and Amy came up beside me. I'm so sorry, she said. For the sale. For the argument before you left, I've replayed it 1,000 times. I leaned on my cane and looked at the wall. I replayed it too. I thought if I hadn't pushed. No, I turned to her. Listen to me. You did not cause a river, you did not cause a crash, you did not cause 6 lost years. But I said. So did I, my voice shook then, because truth does. I was angry that you were trying to hurry me into being old, and maybe you were angry that I was pretending grief hadn't changed me. We were both wrong in places, that is not the same as guilt. She nodded, crying in that silent way she's had since childhood. I reached up and fixed a strand of hair behind her ear. My mother had done that to me. I had done it to her. Time loops if you let it. I don't forgive you because I have to, I said. I forgive you because I came back. I'm not wasting that. She let out a sound somewhere between a sob and a laugh and put her forehead against mine. I missed you so much. I know, honey. That afternoon, the sale resumed in a different spirit. Family only. Then a few buyers later, after the important things were pulled, I sat on the porch in Tom's chair while Amy and Ben handled people. Marisol took calls from officials. Luke stayed near me, bringing water, carrying boxes, acting older than 16 and younger too. Now and then a stranger would step up to the porch, look at me, look at the sign still stuck out by the road, and realize what had happened. Most just nodded and kept their mouths shut. A few said they were glad I was home. One old woman buying a lamp squeezed my hand and whispered, "Welcome back," like she knew it wasn't simple. She was right, it was. Being alive again did not fix everything at once. The state still had to reverse records, banks still needed paperwork, doctors still had to figure out what came next for my health. There were interviews with people in offices, signatures, notaries, and one truly ridiculous meeting where a young man explained without irony that I would need to provide proof of life. I looked him in the eye and said, "I came in person. What more were you hopping for?" He turned red. Amy laughed for the first time in weeks, she later told me. I did not move back into the farmhouse. That surprises people. They hear my story and imagine I rushed in, locked the doors, and clung to every floorboard. But by then the house had become too large, too worn, too full of ghosts and broken plumbing. Love is not always living in the same place forever. 3 months after the sale, after the county finally admitted I was both alive and inconvenient, I moved into a small one-story place 10 minutes from Amy and Luke. My name went on the mailbox again, Ruth Keller. I stood there the first day with the key in my hand and cried over 7 black letters. Ben came out twice that fall. We sat on my little patio and talked more honestly than we ever had when Tom was alive. Grief had made him brusque, my disappearance had made him harder, my return made him softer in spots he'd forgotten he had. He still tries to fix things too fast. Some people never stop, but now he asks before he takes over, which is a kind of growth. Amy and I are still repairing in places. Love after damage is not smooth. Sometimes she watches me too closely when I stand up, as if I might vanish between the couch and the kitchen. Sometimes I hear guilt in her voice even when she's talking about groceries. Sometimes I wake at night and feel angry all over again that she sold my casserole dishes. Then I remember I am here to be annoyed, and somehow that feels like grace. Luke changed the most for me because he had changed the most without me. I missed his middle school years, his voice dropping, his first heartbreak, his learner's permit. There is no getting that back, we both know it, so we don't pretend otherwise. Instead, he comes over every Thursday and I teach him one recipe at a time. Biscuits, chili, banana bread. We use the blue pie plate for apple crisp now because neither of us trusts a heavy pie crust on a Tuesday. He tells me about school, music, girls, and the strange mystery of why boys his age travel in packs to the refrigerator and then stare inside like the answer to life might be behind the milk. Sometimes he asks about Tom, sometimes he asks about the coma. Mostly he asks ordinary things. Ordinary is precious to me now. A year after I walked into that estate sale, Amy asked if I wanted to have a yard sale at the new place. I looked at her over my reading glasses and said, "If you call it an estate sale, I'll haunt you while I'm still alive." She laughed so hard she had to sit down. In the end, we did have one, not because we needed the money, because I wanted to choose it myself. My living sale, Luke called it. We put out the things I truly did not need. Extra dishes, old lamps, quilting scraps I knew I'd never use. Amy made coffee. Ben hauled tables. Luke ran the cash box and gave one little girl a ceramic rabbit for free because, in his words, it looked like she needed a win. I watched strangers carry away pieces of my old life, and this time it did not feel like erasure. It felt like release. Near the end of the day, after most people had gone, Amy sat beside me on the porch steps and said, "You know, I still can't believe you just walked up the driveway." I smiled, neither can I. She leaned her head on my shoulder. When I saw you, I thought I was losing my mind. You came down those steps fast. I thought if I didn't touch you right away, you might disappear. I took her hand. I'm not saying I'll never leave again. Life has a way of doing what it wants, but I'm here now. She squeezed my fingers. That's enough. Maybe that's the real ending if stories like this get real endings at all, not the court papers getting fixed, not the headlines that came after, not the neighbors bringing casseroles and standing in my kitchen like they'd seen a miracle and weren't sure whether to whisper. Not even the day I got a new driver's license and laughed when the clerk said, "Welcome back into the system." The real ending is smaller. It's Luke walking into my kitchen without knocking. It's Ben calling just to ask how long to grill chicken thighs. It's Amy texting, "Need anything from the store, Mom," and that last word still making my chest tighten in the best way. It's my yellow mug in the dish drainer. It's Tom's chair by the window in a house he never saw, but I think he would have liked. It's the blue pie plate in the cabinet, not because it survived, but because I did. People ask me now what it felt like to be declared dead and then come back. I tell them the truth. It felt lonely. It felt absurd. It felt like waking in the middle of a sentence someone else had finished for me, but it also taught me something I might never have learned any other way. A life is not only the things inside it, not the house, not the papers, not the objects strangers carry off in boxes. A life is where you are remembered, where your name still means something when somebody says it out loud, where a daughter falls apart at the sight of you and a grandson keeps your quilt just in case. So yes, I walked into my own estate sale. And then, little by little, I walked back into my life.